morning. My name is Josephine Cusson and I am currently the chair of the LIA Cork Committee, and I am your MC for the morning. On behalf of my colleagues on the LIA Cork Region Committee, I welcome you all to our Sharing for Success event. A special welcome to our guest speakers, John Murphy, Billy Walsh and Tony Gordon, who have travelled to be with us here today, and to LIA Chief Executive Pat O'Sullivan and LIA President Seamus Fox. As you know, the LIA provides an array of events and seminars each year to assist our members in enhancing their knowledge, competence and skills. Our hope is that today will also provide you with an opportunity to further enhance your skills and to take away some ideas, some new and some old, that will assist you in the development of both your business and you personally. As an LIA Business Value event, this morning will also provide you with an opportunity to network among yourselves and also with the speakers during our coffee break and at lunch. So for the next few hours, please try and forget about the office and try to open your mind to fresh ideas and new approaches to how you operate your business and win new clients. Before getting started, I just want to give you a quick run through the schedule of events this morning and some housekeeping. The first session will be approximately 90 minutes, during which John and Billy will give their presentations. This will be followed by a 30-minute coffee break, which will be approximately at 11:35. During this time, you will have ample time to deal with phone calls and emails, so can I please ask you to make sure your phone is on silent during presentations. After the break, Tony will give his presentation, and we will end with a Q&A session and panel discussion with our three speakers. So please feel free to jot down any questions that come to mind during the presentations, as you'll have time to ask questions at the end. Lunch will be served from a buffet in the pre-function area just outside here, where teas and coffees were served, and we will come back in here to eat. Finally, can you please note the nearest exit to you just in case of an emergency. So to kickstart the event this morning, can I please ask our President, Seamus Fox, to say a few words. Thank you, Seamus.
Welcome everybody. What a great turnout today. I'm actually looking out there, full house. I'd like to congratulate Josephine, Chair of Cork, and our hard-working committee, and the staff at LIA for putting this day together. It's fantastic. I'm really delighted also that it's been held in Cork on many levels. The LIA was founded, as most of you know, 36 years ago in Cork. Also, I'm proud to address you this year as President of the LIA 2014. And also it's great to actually address an audience where so many familiar faces I can see. Actually, the LIA wasn't originally established with a mandate for education. It was established on an ethos of colleagues sharing ideas, networking, motivating each other. And these things are as important now as they were 36 years ago. I'd contend that you can have all the knowledge and technical expertise in the world, but if you don't have a client to impart it to, what value is it? And those skills in itself are really important. Skill to find a client, skill to effectively communicate to that client, and a skill to develop, nurture and maintain a relationship with the client. And in this busy lifestyle that we live in, it's very hard to keep those skills sharp and honed. I remember Ivan Kennedy, past president, at a National Sales Day talking about sharpening the saw. And it reminded me of the skill cycle we operate in. When we start on some form of skill, we're unconsciously incompetent, and with training become consciously incompetent, and with a little more training, we become consciously competent. And eventually with practice and experience, we become where we want to get to, is unconsciously competent. But unfortunately, as I said, lifestyle challenges, maybe complacency, lack of focus, we can tend to find ourselves coming back to being unconsciously incompetent. And that's what I think sharpening the saw is about. That's what today is about. Today is about sharing ideas. Today you'll hear ideas that are new and that you'll use in the future. Today you'll also hear a lot of ideas I'm sure that you've heard before and are old but you haven't used in a while. But I'm pretty confident that everybody will leave today with something, at least with maybe a full stomach after lunch. I'd like to welcome our speakers, John, Billy and Tony, and I really look forward to your presentations. And finally, I just ask you today just to open your ears, open your eyes, and most importantly, open your minds and enjoy the day. Thank you.
Thanks, Seamus. Our first speaker this morning is John Murphy. John has been running his own consultancy business, John Murphy International, for over 10 years. He is an executive and online coach to business owners and professionals internationally, assisting them in mapping a plan of what they want to achieve and what they need to change in order to achieve it. Prior to setting up his own business, John spent many years as an executive director of Friends First. John now lives in France and runs his business from there. Thank you, John, for taking the time to be with us here today. John will share with us how we can stay top of mind when the prospect is ready to buy, to be strategic about our keep in touch activity, and to engage with the influences in our marketplace with integrity and authenticity. Can you please give a warm Cork welcome to John Murphy? Thank you.
That's a good start. And it's great to be here in Cork. And I must say, it's a great honour for me to be here speaking to all of you in the LIA. I have a long association with the LIA, as many of you would know, because I was a member for many, many years in my insurance career. And I also would have been involved in various conferences that have been held through the LIA and going back to the Brendan Glennon days, which is dating me a little bit. But it really is fantastic to be here. And I know, and I'm a great admirer of what the LIA have done. Sorry, I just better look at my watch because Josephine told me to be on a time limit. So I better make sure I'm doing what I'm told. But I'm a great admirer of what the LIA have done in terms of the whole educational side of the industry, and really in terms of raising the standards. But I was delighted when I was talking to Seamus and to Pat and to Josephine earlier this year, when they said they want to do something that was very much around sales. Because, and Seamus said it earlier on, at the end of the day, you know, we can be terribly well educated and we can be terribly knowledgeable, but if we're not selling and we're not getting clients, then we simply don't have a business. So it is really, really important because, you know, no matter what we call ourselves or whatever title we have, you know, we're all selling. Because if we're involved in a business that needs to generate income, and I don't know really of any that comes to mind that doesn't, but if we're in a business that we need to be selling. So it is important for us to focus on that. What qualifies me to talk to you here today, and probably many of you are asking the same question as I am, is what qualifies me to stand here and talk to you about selling, and also to talk to you about, to share some thoughts with you. Well, the fact of the matter is I've been in sales all my life. I started my insurance career with the Royal Ivor, selling door to door, and I moved to direct sales, then into broker sales. I was broker manager for a couple of companies. I set up a direct sales force, and I've been on the board of a life company. And it doesn't really matter what title you have in all of that. At the end of the day, no matter what job it was always about selling, because that's what we do. And even in terms of the work that I did within Eureco, which was looking at the European market, again, you were out there and you were selling. So selling is kind of very much in my blood. I set up my own business, as Josephine said, about 10 to 11 years ago. And I set up my own business. Again, that's selling. Because if I don't sell, if I don't find clients, then I simply don't have a business. I can give myself whatever title I like, be a consultant, be a business coach, be a managing director, or whatever. It doesn't matter a damn. I am selling. And that's what I do for a living. And in the business that I'm in, and the clients that I work with, excuse me, I work primarily with professional services companies. So people like yourselves. And I do a lot of work with financial advisory companies some here in Ireland, others in the UK, in the US, and in Australia. And when you're looking at the service, professional services business, it's about relationships, because that's what we're managing. We're managing relationships with people that we come in contact with. And we must remember that that's what we do. So it's actually about maintaining those relationships over a long time. And that's really what I'm talking about here in terms of keeping in touch. We need to be putting ourselves in front of people on a consistent basis. And we can do that in various different ways. Nowadays, we don't have to do it just face-to-face. There are lots of different ways we can do it. I do it in my own business. Most of my coaching is done online, is not done face-to-face. So there are different ways that we can do this and stay top of mind. But you know, when we're talking about a business, what tends to happen, and I think we've all been guilty of it, certainly I can put my hand up and say that I have been, is that we do a certain amount of kind of business generation, and then we get into business fulfillment, and then we complete that, and then we look around and say, well, where's the next one? And so we end up with these kind of peaks and troughs of business, which ends up with peaks and troughs in cash flow, which is not the healthiest situation for any business. And to me, generating leads is the equivalent of cash flow in a business, because that's what we need to do. We need to make sure that we have a process and a system that is just going to continuously generate leads for us going forward, that we don't have these peaks and troughs in there. And really, what we talk about here is, is a process of making sure that we are generating sufficient leads all the way through. And if we look at it, why we're not generating sufficient leads, well, there are a variety of different reasons. We're not getting as much from existing clients as we should. We've got a poor pipeline because we don't keep feeding that pipeline. We're not doing enough presentations. I was talking to somebody yesterday. I was coaching a client yesterday before I came over here. And I was saying, well, in reality, when you're talking about their business targets, and I'm saying, okay, well, how much they expected to achieve in the month of May. I say, well, how many appointments, how many sales appointments have you got between now and Friday? And the answer was 2. I was saying, well, that means probably have to have 100% success rate with those in order to achieve your targets, which is really not stacking the odds in your favor. So not having enough presentations, not having enough referrals, and I want to come back to that. And the consequence is that we simply don't have enough leads. One of the interesting things that I came across recently from Harvard was that 74% of clients will give you referrals if you keep in touch. If you keep in touch. And that's the caveat. Now that is an enormous percentage. And for all of us demonstrates how much we're leaving on the table by not being proactive in terms of developing relationships and getting referrals from people that we might get referrals from. And I come back and I talk a little bit about that. But what's the consequence is that we're having too few conversations. But we're having too few conversations with the right people at the right time. And I say that very, very carefully. And when I talk about the right people, I'm talking about, and we could do an entire seminar on this particular point, but the right people is having your target market. And one of the things that I do in my own work is when I'm talking with businesses and say, well, who is your target market? And generally there's a little bit of kind of, it's this, or it's company directors, or it's high net worth. That's not an answer. That's not a target market. That's kind of an enormous group. It's like saying, my target market is accountants. Whereas is it KPMG, or is it somebody on the South Mall that's got one person working for them? Very different depending on what it is. And I interviewed somebody recently because I do a lot of podcasting as part of my own marketing and getting my own brand out there. And one of the people I interviewed, I came across him through the LIA magazine, Michael Kitses. I hope some of you have read his articles. If you haven't, I highly recommend that you do. Michael is a really serious commentator in the US and the whole arena of financial services, but particularly focused on financial advisors. And his kind of reason for being is actually to elevate the profession of financial advisors. And he's a very technical guy, by his own admission. To give you an example, I think he's branded his blog The Nerd's Eye View. So that gives you an idea of kind of the sort of techie guy that he is. But I was interviewing him about where he sees financial advisors, what he sees the issues and all of that. And I asked him the question, what is the number one challenge facing financial advisors? And this is on a global basis, not just in the US, because Michael speaks all over the world. And to quote what he said, the biggest challenge, and I was expecting him to talk about changes in regulation, changes in tax and all that sort of stuff, and changes in structure of policy, changes in remuneration, all of that. But that wasn't his answer. His answer was, it's a crisis of differentiation. That they're not differentiating themselves. They're not seen as specialists. And I think it's a very valid point. So when I talk about not having the right conversations with the right people are the people that are in your target market. They're the people that you have identified where you specialize in providing them with a service. And having conversations with the right people at the right time is at the time that when they are ready to buy. Because the fact of the matter is that while we all might like to think that we are so wonderful and so impressive and so mercurial as salespeople that we determine when the clients buy, that's not the truth. The truth is that the client will buy when the client is ready to buy. And we've got to remember that. And what happens too often is that we do go through the process, we do all the fact find, we do all the gathering the information, then we present and the client doesn't do the transaction. And what happens very often, and let's be honest about it, we've all made the mistake, and I can certainly say that I have in the past. Don't do it now, because I learned. But you move on and said, okay, that's not going to be a client. And you move on to somebody else. But you don't always know what's going on in that person's world. You don't know of other situations that they need to do. They might not want to admit to having the money. It mightn't be the right time. They want to do an extension of their house. They might owe money to their brother-in-law, whoever it might be. So there are circumstances at play that maybe you don't know. So you move on. If you've done your work right, and assuming you have, the need still exists, but it hasn't been satisfied. But at some stage in the future, when that individual decides, now I need to actually satisfy that need that I have, where are you? You probably have found that you moved on. But if you think about what Mark McCormick said, that people buy from people that they know, like, and trust. And that's about relationships. And this applies whether you're talking about online or whether you're talking about offline. I said I've got a mixture of business. I've got an online business and an offline business. The same business, but they're transacted both online and offline. But people still buy, and Mark McCormick, who is the founder of the IMG sports management company, said that many years ago. And it's still true today. But it's about building that relationship. And you build that relationship over time. And what you've got to remember is that when we're actually building that relationship, we build that relationship through our sales funnel, our sales process, or call it whatever you like. But the sales process, it looks like this. It's about familiarity. So people come in contact with you. I'm not saying that they've actually may not have met you, but they may have heard about you, or they may have seen something you wrote, or they may have somebody who said, I know, Seamus Fox, who's done some great work for me. And what are they going to do? They're going to try and familiarize themselves with you. They're going to try and find out. They'll Google you. They look you up and you look at your website. Because they want to get to know you. They want to get to know, are you the right person for them? Are you the person that is going to be dedicated to them? I was talking to somebody recently who's a financial advisor, and he was telling me that he had met or been introduced to a consultant obstetrician, and he'd gone through the fact find, done everything, and made a presentation, a whole lot to it. Everything went terribly well, but he didn't get the business. And he was kind of mystified as to why he didn't. And after a lot of probing and a lot of discussion with, challenging the person, why wasn't, eventually the consultant said, well, I don't see you as somebody who is dedicated to me. I don't see you as somebody who is dedicated to working with the medical consultants. Now, that may be fair or unfair, but it's a reality. He didn't see this particular person as somebody who was dedicated to them. And when somebody is checking you out and they're becoming familiar with you, they want to have a look. So if you go back and have a look at your websites, and have a look at your website and see, does that reflect who you are and who you work with, then I suggest you need to do something different about it. But they really want to go on and have a look and say, well, might you be the one? Might you be the one that will really work with me, that is dedicated to me? It's also about building trust. I'm not talking about trust in regard to money, but trust that you will deliver, trust that you will fulfill the commitments that you make, trust that you will be there, trust that you will support them, trust that when the challenges come up, when problems come up, that you will be around. You've got to demonstrate your values, and again, that's got to be clear. Because don't forget the buying is not really a left-brain logical decision. If we think about the major purchases that we've made in our lives, and for most of us, that would be buying a house, right? How many of those are logical? They're not. I've never bought a house I could afford. I don't think anybody else has, right? Probably can afford it less nowadays, but anyway, that's a separate conversation. But you don't buy it. You buy it because it's some way of connection. Well, actually, in my case, it was my other half that made the emotional connection, and I just went along with it, because that's what tends to happen in my house. And but it isn't a left-brain logical decision. You make an emotional connection, and that's how we do business, particularly in relationship businesses. But then that person becomes, a lead, is somebody that, potentially might do business with us. They qualify themselves in some way. You meet each other, or you get introduced, or whatever it might be. And then to become a prospect, where you're in discussion about becoming a client. And then ultimately becoming a customer. But again, going back to what we're saying, people will buy, and the client will buy when they are ready to buy. They will go through that sales cycle at their own pace. Now, that's not everybody will go through that sales cycle, and I'm not saying that's the perfect sales cycle. But it's pretty much got the component parts that you need. People will come in at different stages. There will be people who contact you because they just want you to transact something. I'm not saying everybody will go through that. But if you look at that as a process, that's a whole relationship building process that you've got to go through with those clients. And each step of the way, you've got to be building on that relationship. So when you're looking at your sales cycle, you've got to understand what it is you're doing that's going to move them through each step and each stage of that sales cycle. Because you've got to do different things at different stages in it. But when that prospect, when you've gone through the whole process, you've made your presentation, they have decided for whatever reason they are not going to transact business with you, then you move on. And what happens? When the client is ready to buy, where are you? Now, we'd all like to think that we are so extraordinarily memorable that a year down the road, when they've decided that they're going to buy, that they're going to say, oh gosh, I do remember, that was such a wonderful presentation, and that was such a wonderful, well put together proposal. I will go back. They might, but let's be honest about it. The chances are they won't, particularly if you have not been in touch, because you haven't demonstrated anything. So what we're talking about here is keeping you top of mind, keeping you front of mind, and everything about marketing. I'll talk a bit about marketing in a few minutes because it's not a term that I'm particularly enamored with. But everything is about staying front of mind. I could give you examples from various clients of mine, but to give you an example in my own world, I had somebody that I had proposed to, I'd say about 7 or 8 years ago, to do a piece of work with their company. We didn't do it for a variety of different reasons. I think I probably went back, and I think I probably had a go at pitching again once or twice in that intervening time. But again, didn't do anything and didn't make any progress. But I stayed in touch with the key person. And I stay in touch. When I'm talking here about keeping in touch, I want to make it clear, I'm not talking about having an email list where I'm sending it out to everybody at the same time. That's a valid and that's a perfectly valid method of staying in touch with people. This is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a one-to-one keep in touch. But I did keep in touch with this person. I knew the areas of interest to them. I was sending them stuff out. I'd get the odd comment back about, that was interesting, or thanks for that, or whatever it might be. Most times I get nothing. But about 6 or 7 months ago, he rang me up, and it's one of the legal firms. And he said, just came out of a meeting with the partners, and we were discussing something that we need to do with some of our key people in the organization. And I thought, you're the guy I should call because I got an email from you yesterday and it just reminded me. Now, with the best one in the world, I'd love to think that he'd remember the proposition that I made to him 7 or 8 years ago, but he wouldn't. Not in a million years would he do it, right? I stayed front of mind and he gave me the call, and that resulted in quite a bit of business. I had another phone call only 2 weeks ago from somebody, again, a company I did some work with, and I've stayed in touch with those people. And I got a phone call from her, and she said, listen, I'm just transitioning out of the company that I'm in. I'm setting up my own business, and I'd like to work with you to actually help me to make that transition. Would never have happened if I hadn't stayed in touch. And there are loads of examples like that, and that's how I get my business. And for many of my clients, putting this process in place, that's how they get their business. It happens regularly to me, and it happens regularly to my clients. And let's be honest about it, it's the easiest way of getting business. I mean, after getting business from existing clients, getting business from the network that you have and relationships that you have is the second easiest way of getting business. But, and there's a big caveat in this, when you actually start doing this, you must be consistent. This is not something that you do when you think of it or when it's raining and the golf is called off. This is something that you've got to make sure that you're doing on a consistent basis. Because when you do it on a consistent basis, people actually get to expect to get something from you. And it also demonstrates something about you, that you have got the consistency and you are always out there helping and supporting and offering information that is valuable to them. It cannot be on an ad hoc basis. If it is, it's a complete waste of time. And what I'm talking about here, I just want to repeat it again, I'm not talking about a newsletter you send out to your entire email list. Nothing wrong with that, I do that myself. But I'm talking here about individual one-to-one keeping in touch. And it is really important that you do that, as well as doing the broad newsletters that we all send out. But when we're talking about keeping in touch, we've got to make sure that it is strategic. I say that it is, you've thought it through. You've thought it through in terms of the people that are going through that cycle that we were talking about. You're also thought it through in terms of who are the people you're sending what information out to. That it is resonating with the people that you are sending information out to, and that it is relevant to them. And that's really, really important, that what you're sending out is relevant to them. It must be about sharing your values. So what you're sending out must actually be a reflection of the values that you have in your business and in your life. And you've got to demonstrate that in the way that you communicate with them. because it's got to be about what you stand for. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't send something out that you disagree with, and you can actually say that you disagree with it and why you disagree with it, because that's also a way of demonstrating your values. But you've also have got to make sure that you're building trust with it, because it is about, that you can be relied upon. And the fact that you are consistently sending out information that is valuable to them, and you're not asking for something in return, that is demonstrating that you can be relied upon. But it also demonstrates that you are dedicated to them, and you are dedicated to serving them. And at the end of the day, in a professional services relationship, that's what you need to be. And the last point is that it's adding value. Adding value and relevance. If I could take the word marketing out of parlance, it's not a word I like because it's bandied around and people don't have all sorts of different connotations about what it means. But relevance to me is the most important thing. You might send me something that is beautiful and glossy and fascinating, but it's about boat building. And I know nothing and care less about boat building, right? So it can be great because you love it, but it's useless to me. And all it's actually doing is reflecting to me, this guy doesn't know an awful lot about me. So you're doing yourself a disservice. So it's really, really important that when you're sending out information, that you're sending it out, that it is relevant to them. But when we're talking about our network, we have different relationships with different people. So we have to segment our network. It can't be kind of a one-size-fits-all. We have different relationships in that network for different reasons. Now, I'm not going to try and segment your network, but I give you an indicator of how I've segmented my own, just to give you a kind of a sense for how I do it, and then you can just apply the same principles. But the point that I'm making is that it's not a one-size-fits-all. You do have different relationships in your network for different reasons. And if I talk about the ones that I would have a segment in my network where there are event organizers, because I speak at conferences, I attend conferences, I want to know what conferences are taking place. So there are people that I want to stay in touch with, and I want to have a very particular type of communication with them. I have a segment that are potential joint venture partners. I have got joint venture partners that I do some work with, a bit in Ireland, I do some in the UK, I do some in the US as well. And they are joint venture partners that I have where I would do work with them, and then vice versa. And they're also people that I would like to have joint venture partnerships with, and they're in that particular segment. And again, I've got a very particular type of communication I want to go out to them. Different to the first one. And these are all different to each other. Clients, pretty obvious one. I want to have communication with them, but again, I want to have a particular style and a particular, flow process that I actually want to share with them. I have a segment that I call direct outreach, and what I call direct outreach in my parlance, there are people that I don't know yet. I don't know, I've never met them, but I've identified them as people who I believe can help build my business. But I've never met them, but I want to get to know them. And I want to reach out to them to actually make contact with them and build a relationship with them. But I said, they don't know me just yet, but they will. Leads, obviously we get leads. I want to communicate with people that are already leads, and how I communicate with them is different. Influencers, these are people who I do already know and can influence my business, and again want to communicate in a specific way. Past clients is a pretty obvious one, and referral partners is another. And I would have a relationship with 5, which I could refer to as my gang of 5, referral partners where we refer business to each other. And again, I want to have a relationship with them. And, it's really important that we do have those, clear in our own mind, what are the different relationships I want to have? Now, your segments will look, very different to that I put up there. That's fine. But, segmented. Don't have a one-size-fits-all. Be very clear about the different segments and be very clear how you're going to communicate with them. But what I would say, that the critical elements is that you need to have a process and a system. You've got to have a system to do this. This is not something that you can just decide to do when I think of it, decide to do when I'm not all that terribly busy, because all that results in is the same, the peaks and troughs that we talked about earlier on. And that's what we're trying to avoid. You must have a system to do it. There are plenty of systems out there to utilize. The one that I use, and I'm happy if anybody wants to get in touch with you to share with you, I don't have any shares in the place, by the way. I'd love to have it. It's a system we call it. It's a US system called Contactually. And I like it because it's simple, and I'm not a techie. Even though I have an online business, I'm not a techie. But I find a very simple system. And some of the other systems that I tried, I found that I would have needed to go on a FOSS course. Well, FOSS don't exist anymore, do they? Whoever they're called. But they were terribly technical and terribly complicated and complex. But this one's actually very simple. But there are plenty of systems. That's not the point I'm making. But the point I'm making is that there's got to be a process. It's got to be integrated into your day. That you do this on a daily basis. If you leave it until when I have a free moment, when I'm, slack, when I'm in the office, when I'm at home at night, maybe I'll go in early one morning, it just won't happen. It's got to be part of your daily ritual. I'm big into rituals because I think if you have strong rituals in your life, it says an awful lot about you because you've got discipline about doing things. But it's got to be integrated into your daily routine that it's prompting you to take action. It's prompting you to actually take action on a daily basis. In these systems, they say, well, what am I going to say every day? For God's sake, what am I going to talk about? Well, listen, there's no shortage. There's loads of information. It is the glory of the technology today is that there is a wealth of information. You can share some of the stuff that you write, if you write. You can share stuff that other people write. And I would kind of have a principle about it that, 80% of the time I share other people's stuff and 20% of the time I share my own. Because I write a lot of articles, I do a lot of podcasting, I do a lot of webinars, things like that. But you don't want it to be all about you. It's very much about bringing useful information from other people. The like of Michael Kitces is a good example. He is so prolific in what he... I marvel at the amount of writing that he does. I don't know how he works because he just produces. He's so prolific. But there are loads of sites where you can get in. If you don't know whether, get in touch with me and I'll send you, loads of links that you can get. There's no shortage of information and the systems will help you to share the information. Here's an interesting article that I got. I thought this would really, you'd really find this fascinating. Again, it's about the relevance. But you can store the articles and you can share them. But I said it's got to be about frequency and consistency. And consistency can be once a year. I accept that, but that's not what I'm talking about. It's got to be frequent. And you've got to make sure, because don't forget, marketing is about, making you front of mind. If we could get rid of the word marketing, that's all it's doing. And marketing doesn't sell. Marketing makes people aware of you. You've got to do the selling. But you've got to be front of mind. You've got to stay front of mind. And it's got to be this one-to-one communication. So it's got to be clear that, he's actually thought about or she has thought about me when I'm getting the email. And it's got to be, kind of natural. That it's a natural thing. It doesn't seem forced. It doesn't seem uneasy. It doesn't seem comfortable. And the last part I said, it's always, always adding value. It's always something interesting, it's always something useful, and it's always something that is relevant. When we go back to the... Frank, am I stuck there in the slide? Okay. When we go back to the sales process, is what are we doing about keeping in touch right through that process? Because if I'm looking at what is taking them from the initial, that actually makes them go from the initial to the familiarity. Then when they get to familiarity, that they say, yes, this is somebody that is dedicated to me, and this is somebody that will serve me well. Then what am I doing that's going to bring them to the next stage, and then to the next stage, and right through to being customers. Because that's the challenge for us. That is the challenge for us, to do that and to communicate on a one-to-one basis in order to make sure that we're achieving it. Let me share with you what my routine is, and this is what I recommend to my clients. And it's about every day, because this regular contact will result in increased trust, will result in strong relationships, and will result in more sales. If you do this, you will get more sales. There is no doubt about that. I have seen this time and time and time again in my own business, in my clients' businesses, and in other businesses, because it ain't any different, and it hasn't changed a heck of a lot. But just talk about my daily commitment. I get in touch with 7 people every day by email, one-to-one email that I send out, and the system helps me do that. I make sure that what I send out is relevant, and I make sure that what I send out is of interest to the people that I'm sending it to. I introduce 2 people in my network to each other, right? Because it's not about putting my arms around and being protective about my own network. Now, these are 2 people that are, they could have something in common. Somebody might say, listen, I've got a need for whatever it might be, and I know somebody, I just put them 2 in contact. Or it could be simply, I know that they're both interested in cycling or hill walking or golf or whatever it might be, but they should meet each other. And I do that because I want to make sure that I'm making my network live and that it's coming to life. And of course, by the law of reciprocity, the more you do that, the more people do it back to you. And that's a simple law of reciprocity, and it works. Okay? It does work. So I introduced 2 people. And the last thing I said, sorry, just go back. No. The last thing I do is I reach out to one person that I don't know yet. And this was my direct outreach bubble that I showed you earlier on. Because, again, this is something that, left to my own devices, without being prompted to do it, frankly, I wouldn't do it, and I'd never get around to doing it, and I would never get in touch with people that I don't know yet, but I believe could seriously influence my business. So that's my discipline. So that means that I'm getting in contact with, and I said this is the system that I use with my clients, or get my clients to use for them. That's 10 people every day that receive a personal email from me. That's 50 people a week. And that's on top of any meetings I have, any business I'm transacting, anything else that I'm doing. That's 50 people per week. That's 200 people every month. That's a lot of people. There isn't a snowball's chance in hell I could get in front of 50 people per week or 200 people per month. But I'm front of mind with that number of people. How long does it take me to do it? It takes me between 15 and 20 minutes every day. That's all. If you've got the right system, you can do it. But the point is that is that number of people that receive something from me, that get something from me, whether they open it, whether they read it, or whether they don't. I know people that do, and I know that people generally do, because it's an individual. It's not a kind of a newsletter. There's a system that I use for doing newsletters, which is completely separate. But if you're front of mind with 50 people every week, don't you think there's a really good chance when they decide that they want your service, that they're going to get in touch with you? The fact of the matter is that I know that keeping in touch does get more sales. Again, it's going back to the contact with the right people at the right time. It's staying in contact with the right people at the right time. Be clear about your target market, staying in touch with them, and doing this in a very, very strategic way. It's demonstrating that you are there for them. It's demonstrating that you can be relied upon. It's demonstrating that you are there to serve, and we are in a service business. It's demonstrating that you will always be present for them. I can guarantee you, and I don't say that lightly, I can guarantee you, if you do this, and if you walk away from today, and you can walk away from today, and you can start this today, You can start this today. Your business will grow exponentially as a result of doing this on a systematic, strategic, organised way. If anybody wants any more information about it, they can just drop me an email. My email address is there, again on my website. I'll share any information I have. But the point, I want you to walk away today understanding that this is not rocket science. And, you know, when Seamus said earlier on in the morning, you know, kind of sharing new and old ideas, this falls into the old ideas category. This ain't something new, but the fact is that most of us don't do it. But I can guarantee you that if you do this, and you do this in a strategic way, you will get more clients, you will build more clients, you will build a sustainable business for yourselves, and you will never, ever be short of clients, and you will smooth that business out. Thank you for your time. I hope you found it useful.
Thank you, John, for that wonderful presentation. I think we'll all take different points away from it. But for me, I think the importance of having a plan to keep in touch with our clients is a very important factor in the whole scheme of things, and to know what content you want to send those clients. So thank you, John, very much again. Our next speaker this morning is Billy Walsh. Billy is head coach to the Irish Amateur Boxing Association High Performance Team. During Billy's own boxing career, he won 7 Irish senior titles. He represented Ireland at European and World Championships and competed in the 1988 Olympic Games in Seoul. As head coach of the high performance team, Billy has overseen the development and nurturing of many boxers, including Katie Taylor, John Joe Evans and Paddy Burns, and has helped them become world-class performers. Thank you, Billy, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us here today and to share with us the Olympic story and the journey of how preparation and attitudes had to change in order to cope with adversity, the importance of teamwork in achieving goals, and how these can relate to business, and the adaptability needed to survive and to be successful. Please give a warm welcome to Billy Walsh.
Good morning. Just a little bit about myself that's probably not in that. I come from a place in Wexford Town, which is probably known, it's a working class area. Funnily enough, when I grew up, there were very few people in the street working. I think my dad was probably one of the few. He was a butcher, and there were 6 of us in the household, of a 2 up and 2 down. So in that street, there was a coach who wasn't my dad, which is probably unusual in a lot of boxing situations. And this guy, as a 7-year-old, brought me to a boxing club, and I was probably coerced or sent there by my dad. I had a little bit of a robust manner on the street that I lived in, and I was sent there. And he asked the Christian Brothers actually to take me in and curb my ways, and I found a sport that if I got a great kick out of, and quite a few knocks out of, and gave quite a few. So my career then, at 7 years of age, I grew up in a GEA background. My parents, my aunt was an All-Ireland Camogie medal winner. My parents were hurlers and footballers, and I grew up with that. Played hurling and football, soccer, boxing, the 4 cheap sports. I didn't have to pay anything to go to them. And by the time I was 14, I was on the county under 14 hurling team, football team, soccer team, and I won my first Irish boxing title. So talk about player burnout. So by the time I was 18, I gave up that foreign game, that soccer game, and I was captain of the minor football team, Leinster hurling final, which made a decision for me. I'll tell you about it in a second. And I had won my 4th Irish boxing title. We played in Croke Park having beaten the same Kilkenny team at under 14 in Croke Park in 1977, in 81, more or less the same two teams met in the Leinster hurling final. And we were 5 points up with 6 minutes to go. And a wrong decision by the linesman, which gave them a line ball in. Has anybody here from Kilkenny? Not that I dislike you, but we do hate you. So this line ball, it should have been my line ball. I was playing wing back at the time, and the guy got a hurl to it and went out, and he gave the line ball the other way. He cut it in, into the square, back of the net, beat us by a point. So I threw my hurl down that day and I said, fuck this. I want to go to the Olympic Games. I don't want to rely on 14 other guys. I wanted to rely on myself. I knew that I was going to get up at 5:30 in the morning, but I didn't know the rest of these guys would. So my pathway then led towards, even though I did continue to play hurling and football throughout my career, but towards the Olympic Games, and eventually got there in 1988. Probably best known for Ben Johnson taking the steroids, sorry. So what I'm going to speak about today is really about this program, how it began. It's actually 11 years ago now. We're in a transition at the moment as well, and maybe we can talk about it later. We're in the next phase of it. A sport that has had success throughout the generations. You know, in the history of Irish sport, Olympic Games, there's 28 medals that have been won in all sports. 16 of them have been won by boxers. Between 2008 and 2012, in 4 years, we've won 7, which is a quarter of the total in the history of the state. So how did that happen? This was when I was a 1970s porn star. I did actually have, that wasn't a wig, actually, I did actually have curly hair like that and a moustache for a long time. I don't know why people told me, didn't tell me to take it off. I looked ridiculous. But this is where we're at. You know, 2000, there was one guy who went to the Olympic Games, and he's from Cork. And maybe a lot of you don't know him, but Michael Roach was his name. And we were in the job 10 months, and in 2004, we had one boxer at the Olympic Games. So you all know who this guy is, eh? It's a dodo. We had nearly become a dodo at the Olympic Games. Nearly become extinct. We had one boxer in 2004, which is, you may know him, Andy Lee, who was still campaigning as a professional. So, a world competitor to the growth of your people, the journey to realise our potential in sport. So again, John alluded to some of it earlier. You know, it's about getting the right people in the right place. You know, I wasn't director when I started. I was employed as head coach. Director was Gary Keegan, who's now the director of the Institute of Sport. He saw something in me. I know I fooled him. You know, 11 years ago, there's no way I was a head coach. I had been an Olympian, I had won a lot of titles and had a good respect, but I didn't know the knowledge that I had wasn't good enough to be head coach. So we all grew together. So getting the right process, that's what got us to winning. It's similar to your business, as we just spoke about earlier on. So the strategy was internal, strength from within. We looked inward in the context of what we faced outward. We didn't go and look at what, we looked at ourselves, we made ourselves physically, technically, tactically, mentally, built ourselves up, upskilled ourselves, developed our people. You know, in Ireland, last February, our national senior championships were on. 82 senior boxers weighed in. Out of that 82, I would say 25 are probably serious, good at full-time athletes. And out of that 25, we can win all these medals. So we've got to be pretty prescriptive in what we do. And it's developing the people, because we can't. It's not like the Irish soccer team, we can bring in half of England. We're all Irish. We're all from towns and villages in Ireland, aren't we, guys? And we have to develop them. So it's about being clear on what you want and doing the right things to achieve it. So the where am I, the vision, the purpose. We have a very simple vision to consistently stand on world podiums, knowing that we have to strive to become world class. The culture, the no excuse culture, having that continuous improvement mindset. And there's a hunger for it. You know, we hadn't done it for a long time. 1992 was the last time we had an Olympic medal. And the performance was key. So none of the guys spoke about winning gold medals, spoke about winning medals at the Olympic Games. All they spoke about was their performance. So yes, you do have to have the target of that gold medal. But that's a long way out. When you're actually in the competition or in the field of play, you're thinking about the process, which is your performance. And the performance then, if you get the performance right, we always say, the outcome will look after itself. So an opportunity that would impact the team. You know, we dared to think it before we dared to believe it. We prepared as we intended to compete. So this team, when they arrived in to a gym, after doing a hard physical session, I lay them all down in the ring. None of this team had won a medal. They didn't know what it looked like. So we got them to visualize what it looked like, what it smelled like in the changing room, what it was like in getting into the ring, what it looked like standing on a world podium with a medal being put around your neck. And I actually played a Ron V in the background to stimulate those emotions. So we actually saw it. Go back. We thought it, we felt it, and we acted. And seeing it painted, it was important. And around our gym walls, you know, we set up a target for everybody that if they won a medal at any Europeans, World or Olympic Games, they got an opportunity to put a quote on the wall, and it was there forever. Your name also went up on the list of one of the medalists, but the quote, your own personalised quote. And that became bigger than the medal. Some of the guys came back to the corner after winning medals, and the first thing he said, Billy, does that mean I get to put my quote on the wall? It became a bigger thing than a medal. And some of those guys are out of the gym now, and if they come back in, they're off the team, and they come back in, their quote is still there, and how they achieved it. So the price of entry into the team was non-negotiable. So we needed to have resilience. You know, our first training camp, we went to Russia, -10, top team in the world, 5 in each weight division. And we bought our 6 most experienced boxers at the time. Andy Lee would have been one of them. And we got slaughtered. We were beaten from pillar to post, technically, tactically, physically, mentally. We had to come back and tear up a training script that we had put in place for the first 6 months of our program and start all over again. Commitment. You know, people see teams and see sports people living a high life, top class hotels, best of gear. This team arrived, the program had 4 people employed, 5 programs to run on €225,000. So we arrived, we knew as a team, we decided we have to go full time. Training at weekends wasn't good enough if we're going to compete with the best in the world. So the B&B up the road was £40 at the time, a night. So we couldn't afford it. We went to the hardware store and bought blow-up beds, not blow-up dolls. We bought blow-up beds and we all slept on the gym floor. Took them away in the morning and trained there for months. Moved to one of the changing rooms, converted an attic in the gym, put bunk beds in it. And that's where the team moved to. So that was their commitment. Having courage. You know, people thought we were nuts at the beginning. We were crazy. It wasn't going to work. A lot of skeptics in Irish sport, as you know, and particularly in my job and my game, in boxing. This is the way we always done it. We should be doing it this way. But we were getting nowhere the way we were doing it. Performance again was the key. Honesty with each other. You know, if it's right, it's right. If it's wrong, Paddy Barnes won't be long about telling you. Fun, lots of fun and banter. Outside of the business that we do, which is very serious when we're training, but the crack and with the team and creating that atmosphere and again building those relationships with guys, it's fantastic. And belief was key to it. It took us about 3 years for the team to really believe. As you walk into the door or into the door of our gym, the first thing you see is welcome to high performance, where champions achieve because they believe. And the preparation was key to building that belief. If you're prepared properly, don't miss your training sessions. Consistency. That's what leads to your belief. Which led to the mindset change. So this is what we inherited, really. On the left-hand side, it was the excuse culture, poor values, thinking national class, outcome focus. Like, to be Irish champion. That's all these guys wanted to be. Which is great. It's fantastic, but they were happy to be that. What I call being king of the dung heap. It's the rest of Europe and the world we're looking at. Outcome focus and a part-time athlete. We removed all the excuses, behaviours conducive, thinking more class, process focus, step by step. Be professional inside and outside the ring. Activities were a few sessions a week. Training was based on the past. Progression wasn't measured. Now we have full-time training benchmarked against the world's best. Training and performance monitoring and evaluation. The people at the time, the value wasn't tapped. Different coaches every event. Only support was the coach. So he was the psychologist, the strength and conditioning, and he was the nutritionist. Sparring, no one to measure against, only ourselves. You know, I spoke to Owen Liston earlier on about, I went to a place in Kerry in 1988. Our preparation for the Olympic Games, which were in Seoul in Korea, it was a 13-hour flight, a 9-hour time difference, 80% humidity. I trained in Castle Cove in County Kerry. The Stag Fort. And on Shop-a-Dove, the highlight of the day was we'd walk down to on Shop-a-Dove and get an ice cream. It was great. So our mindset has moved on, in our preparation. Amateur lifestyle and boxing over focus. Now we have highly valued people, full-time elite coaching support, integrated sports science and medicine team, world-class sparring partners across the world, which has become a problem. Not that everybody wants to go to Ukraine at the moment, but the Ukraine won't let us back in. Russia won't let us back in. The last 3 European Championships, we've been second place behind the mighty USSR with 145 million people. So we are now become a threat. First we were, last year was only Paddy, let him in, he'll give us a few good rounds, He enjoys himself, he likes a few pints. But now when we start beating them, they're not so friendly. Fully committed, and people first and performers second. So we looked at the pieces in the gym or in your workplace we can control. If they clock in, clock out, if they do so much, we put heart rate monitors on them, we know exactly what levels and intensities that they're working at. But the piece that was having the biggest impact on the team was outside their relationships, their home. So we did what no other team did prior to London. We brought the families in, brought their coaches in, their personal coaches, and showed them exactly what we were going to do leading into the games, the type of language we wanted them, because there was lots of pressure on this team going to London. Everybody expected her to win a medal, didn't it? Did everybody expect Kerry Taylor to win the gold medal? Yeah. My God, that was some pressure. If she hadn't won the gold medal, she was a failure. Imagine that. She'd won the silver medal, she was a failure after all she's achieved. So we had to get the communication right around performance. And we spent the whole day speaking around performance, and then we were having some weight issues with a couple of the guys, and then so we got the family in, we had a nutritionist in, speak to them. But when they're at home, in that period of time, there was 30% of the time left between we had this talk and the time we went to the Olympic Games. For me, it was a 30% chance of improvement. that they were at home if we could control what was happening around their diet and their lifestyle. And, you know, I got John Evan in a bit of trouble that day. We were talking about, you know, how we're going to communicate, Facebook, Twitter, how we're going to manage that over the time. You know, we agreed a date that we're going to sign off that the boys wouldn't be on it when the games are on, and talking about phones and, you know, and I said, look, every time I look at John Joe, he has 2 phones in his hand, and his wife was sitting there. You have 2 phones? He'd never forgive me. So again, people first and performers second. So the next step's on, you've probably seen this before, and taking responsibility. From individual to individuals to a collective. Not one single drop of water thinks is responsible for the flood. And we only know too well here, with the collectively together, what damage they can do, and especially in Cork, it was been flooded a few times, hasn't it? So as a team, even though we're a team of individuals, if we all gel and work together, what a bigger force. And with that, we had a transformation. Anyone have kids know this guy on the right hand side, he's a transformer. We had a togetherness and having that unity of purpose. Having a purpose in life, and a unity of purpose that we all want to consistently stand on world podiums. So we have such great capacity to change from good to great. The champion to be found was not outside, it was from within, like the iceberg. It was inside of us. Purpose, having a purpose, mastery, and autonomy to do your job. Believe in your depth. So beating the competition, they weren't paying attention, first of all. Ireland hadn't won a lot of medals for quite a while. And breaking down our strategy into digestible chunks, step by step, punch by punch, minute by minute, round by round. Instead of looking at outcomes, we looked at the process. Essentially, the global competitors throughout the performance ends. Look at 100,000 boxers in Russia. They can afford to throw a couple of thousand at the wall and a few will stick. We have 100,000 probably from school kids up, as I said to you, only 80 odd at senior level. We've got to be pretty prescriptive in what we do. And our route to, even though we never bother much looking at Cuba or America, our route to the Olympic Games is the hardest route. 70% of the medals won at Olympic Games and World Championships are won by Europeans. We get 30% of the places. So the qualification is the hard part for us. And once we got a team there in 2.8 and 2.12, there's a great chance of success. Prepared like you wanted to compete. So we went out, we travelled to Germany first, France, had a look at what they were doing. Got into Russia, had a look at what they were doing, did a little bit of espionage when we were there. You know, we had hardware monitors on our guys, monitoring what values we were getting in training. And excuse me, the Russians were intrigued with it. So we said to them, look, if you want, we'll put it on some of your guys tomorrow and we'll give you a disc and blah, blah, blah. So the next day we put it on the twice Olympic champion and the 3 times world champion, and we had given the data and they were happy we gave it to them. But we had it as well. So we know what. So a bit of intelligent gathering, you know. So training at the right intensities, having the right focus. This is what we needed to compete, to win at a global level. Using guerrilla tactics. So there was complacency. Everybody knows the identity of those guys on the left-hand side. Your left, yeah. Yeah? So what is your identity? Your business. Do you have an identity? Who keeps flicking with that? Having a warrior mindset requires a no excuse culture, and what do you guys stand for? So it wasn't also rosy. Just 10 months before the Olympic Games in Beijing, we went to the World Championships, which was a qualifier for the Olympics. We had 5 guys fighting for the place to qualify, and only 1 guy qualified. It was Paddy Barnes. So the call when we come back was, can you leave that on? And the call when we come back was for our head. So as a leader, I buried my head in the sand. I was hanging on the edge of the cliffs and I was on the ropes. On the other side, we knew we had the body and the heart to do it. You know the guy in the middle? Homer. So what we had done, we had tied the boxer's hands. By what? By overcoaching. And it got to the stage when we reviewed what we had done, it got to the stage where Kenny Egan was in the ring waiting for me to tell him what punch, in a sport that has milliseconds of reaction, to tell him what punch to throw next. So we reassessed what we were doing. We came back, turned our training environment on its head, asked questions. When they came back to the corner, silence. We asked them the question, what do you think? And then they began to think for themselves. And out of that, 4 guys qualified the next event, and 3 of them became medalists. So is your leadership fit for purpose? You can only truly become great at being you. What matters most is how you see yourself. So when you get up this morning, do you see a pussycat or a roaring lion? I had to creep up on my mirror. Excellence is a choice. We decided we wanted it. We chose to achieve it in every detail, step by step, punch by punch. We focus applying ourselves 100% to achieving our goals. We are relentless. Continuous improvement is the fuel for sustainable success. We visualize what it would look like and painted those pictures in our heads and our environments. Anybody ever been to Vladivostok? It sounds very romantic. It's on the Orient Express, by the way. If you get a free trip in the morning, refuse it. It's a shithole. It's the biggest naval base in Russia. Okay, it's 2 hours from Beijing and 2 hours from Tokyo. And we used it as our base to train with the Russians before we went into Beijing. And that was, we arrived there and thought about becoming adaptable to any environment. We arrived there, this is our bathroom. Then we could have threw the toys out of the plan. You saw the Olympic Games and all the stadia and everything looked fantastic, and the village we were in that shithole, preparing for it. Now we had a choice. Why were we here? We decided, why are we here? We're going to get the best sparring and preparation in the world. So we put up with that. Thankfully, nobody got a disease or died because of it, and went on to have the success. So return on people investment. This has grown since it was put together. 8 world titles, 10 European titles, 7 Olympic medals, Olympic and 4 times world champion Katie Taylor, who will be defending her European championships in a month's time, and in October we'll be defending her world championships. So where we started, Ireland number 2 out of 43 nations in Europe. We were number 5 in London, and we were 6th at the world championships in Kazakhstan. Highest boxer to medal conversion rate in London out of 74 nations. Systematic success. Imported naturalized coach Zor Padiantia, a guy from Georgia who was a massive influence on our team technically, has been with us for the duration of 11 years. World-class service providers, a couple of guys, home Jim Moores from Arklow, Pete Taylor from Bray, homegrown. Understand the power of the mindset and belief, especially when you're in a sales position. You've got to be selling and believing what you're selling. Control the controllables, and that's your own performance. Every day we can control that, how we feel when we get up, how we perform, how we're going to perform that day. Raising the bar puts pressure on those less growth focused. That's the hiders within your company, as well as the competitors. The best in class continue to seek to improve performance. Set and expect high standards of yourself and your team, and enjoy the climb. There is an I in team. There's what I can do to make this team more successful. Here they are, all Irish, 2 Belfast scallywags, I would like to call it. A Kilkenny man, a Wexford man, and a Westmeath man. all Irish, homegrown, ordinary guys, Garda, teacher, 3 full-time boxers. The queen of them all, from Bray, County Wicklow, Katie Taylor. If I could get those 5 guys to live quarter of the life that she lived, we'd have a lot more gold medals. She is a role model. Exception. We will never, ever see another Kelly Taylor. Enjoy her while she's here. I'm going to finish you with a little memory, although it's hard to believe it's 2 years ago since London, and we're all in mid-preparation for Rio. I just want to just check your memory and have a look at what we achieved. And maybe just listen to the words of the song, and then also just the words that are up in front of the screen. And then I'll speak to you later on. Thank you. Just at the end of it, I left that piece on a performance analyst, Alan Swanton, who's from Limerick. He's actually from Cork, but he lives in Limerick. Put that on. And at the very end of it, it says, what's in store for Rio? More of the same. Well, more of the same won't be good enough. What we did last year isn't good enough this year. And what we do this year won't be good enough next year to qualify for Rio. So we have to improve consistently. The piece with John Joe's coming out with a smile on his face. So just a couple of stories, a quick one. The morning of I didn't find this out until later, but the morning of the Olympic final, the night before, if anyone can remember, he had the greatest performance in the Olympic Games. He beat the Cuban, world number 1. He was outstanding. Now, he had a quick turnaround. The next afternoon, he had to go in and fight the English guy who we had beaten before. And we weren't too, I suppose, we knew we could beat him. But on that morning, his mother rang him up. So we're trying to control the controllables and trying to control what's happening. John Joe's mother, he's from travelling background, very superstitious. John Joe, I had a dream last night. He said, you only won the silver medal. I don't mind her having a dream, but why did she fucking tell him that morning? Thank you.
Welcome back. It is great to see so many people here, and think about 250 people in attendance here today, and that no CPD has actually been given, which is great to think that it's not a CPD event for a change. Can I please, just a reminder to check that your phones are on silent again, please. Our final speaker today is Tony Gordon. Tony has presented in 54 countries, a past chairman of MDRT's Top of the Table. He's the only non-North American so far to have served as president of MDRT. In its 87-year history, He has been a top-of-the-table member of MDRT for 36 of its 37 years membership. He's also a past president of LIA UK, and he's also a best-selling author. Tony now focuses his time on mentoring financial advisors and helping them achieve the success he has achieved himself. Please give a warm Cork welcome for Tony Gordon.
Oh, it's great to be back in Cork. Let me ask a question. Who's heard me speak before? Oh, and who's heard me speak more than once? You've heard both speeches. I have to say, from where I'm standing here, the ladies in Southern Ireland are by far the most beautiful in Northern Europe. Right. Yeah. The men, on the other hand, not so good. I have to say, I have some great memories of speaking here in Cork. I was president of the LIA when there was just one LIA. It was the LIA of the UK and Ireland, and I was reminded yesterday, it's 30 years ago. And I remember coming to speak in Cork on one occasion, and it was a freak winter, and the temperature got down to -16. And I was the last, it was a late check-in, I arrived here late, I checked in the hotel late in the evening, and I said, could I have extra blankets? Do you have a hot water bottle? Could they put an extra heater in the room? No, you're the last one here, everybody else has taken it. By the time I got home a couple of days later, I had these red blisters on my feet. I went to the doctors and he said, you got frostbite, where have you been? I said, I went to speak in Cork. Another occasion I came to speak here, the LIA meeting was held in the hospitality suite of Murphy's Brewery. And some of you may even have been there that evening. Well, I was brought in just at the time I was to speak, introduced, I got up, I did my speech. It's the fastest standing ovation I've ever received in my life. Everybody up, one clap, out of the room. I said, what was that? They said, the bar was open for an hour before you got here. The bathroom clearly had greater appeal than asking me any questions. So I'm delighted to be here. And that was a terrific introduction. I mean, don't you think so? 37 years MDRT, 36 years top of the table, past president of MDRT. Were you expecting somebody taller? Or perhaps an intellectual? Well, intellectual I am not. I left school at 16. I hadn't intended to leave. They said, we didn't kick you out, but we're not letting you back. At school, I was placed in a special category. The school, when I was there, had been open for 40 years, and in all of that 40 years, only 3 boys ever qualified for this category. Boys who will never be a success at anything. What a sad way to label children. Let me tell you what happened to these 3 boys. The first boy, who would never succeed at anything, became a professional golfer. He won the British Open. He made millions designing golf courses around the world. Even now, in his 80s, he is still the #1 golf commentator on British television. The second boy, who would never succeed at anything, became an author. He has over 40 bestsellers to his name, many of them made into major Hollywood movies. And the third boy, who would never succeed at anything, he became the 74th president of the $1 Million Round Table. Is there a moral to this? Yes, there is. We must never allow others to sit in judgment on our potential. Never allow others to judge how good we can be. So, was my entry into the life insurance business easy? No. My first month in the business, I had to make 43 sales presentations to make my first sale. In my second month, I made 6 sales, and by the end of the month, they had all cancelled. After 3 months, I had a closing average of 1 in 19. After 4 years, I tried to quit. The only reason I am here with you today is that nobody would offer me a job. So I thought if I changed life insurance companies, it might help kickstart my career. There was a new company opening up in my city. So I went for an interview, and they put me through one of those early personality tests. And when I went back for the second interview a week later, there was the test paper on the manager's desk, and written across it said, this man is not suited to a career in the sale of life insurance. It took me 4 more years, 8 years in total, to qualify for MDRT, but then only 1 more year to do 6 times MDRT and make the top of the table, and continue to make it thereafter. Winston Churchill put it this way. He said, difficulties mastered are opportunities won. Difficulties mastered are opportunities won. So let me ask you a question, if I may. Why are you here today? Now, I know being here is a legitimate excuse to not be out there making calls. But what are you hoping for? Aren't we all looking for something, an idea, maybe just one idea, something we can take back and put to work in our businesses that will help us do what we do a little more successfully. Who would agree with me? Well, let me give you the bad news. If we want our financial circumstances to change, we have to do something differently. When we go back to work this afternoon, if we continue to do what we've always done, we'll continue to be where we've always been. We cannot become what we want to become by remaining where we are. As a friend of mine likes to climb mountains, he puts it this way: succeeding in the life insurance business is just like climbing a mountain. We have to have the courage to let go of something down here in order to reach up for something up here. The success of this morning does not depend upon what the speakers have said. The success of this morning depends on the ideas we take home and have the courage to put into practice. I'm talking about making changes, but the changes do not have to be big changes. Einstein said, the definition of foolishness is continuing to do what we've always done whilst expecting to get a different result. But sometimes the smallest changes can have the most dramatic results. So what I hope to do this morning is to share with you some areas where we might be able to make some small changes, and then also to share with you an opportunity which would require a very big change, but a very dramatic difference in results if we were to make that change. The question I often get asked is, why is it that success seems to come to a chosen few? I would suggest success does not come to a chosen few. Success is chosen by a few. Success is not a matter of chance. Success for us can be a matter of choice. Well, how do we choose to be more successful? By choosing to adopt some of the habits that we've already heard about. I was asked several years ago to interview for a charity event a very famous musician, classical pianist who lives in my city. And it occurred to me when interviewing him that everything that made the classical pianist get to the top of his profession is exactly the same as gets the boxers to the top of their profession that we've just heard so well from Billy this morning, that helps us in the financial services business get to the top of our profession. It's doing the right things with the right discipline. We can choose our work habits. So, it's often been said that we need vision and action to succeed in life. Vision without action is daydreaming, and action without vision is just passing time. But put vision and action together and we can change our lives. And for us, our vision is our goals. Now, we have to have goals. Let me tell you a story, if I may. I have a granddaughter. I know what you're thinking. Surely he's much too young to be a grandfather. Well, I have 4 grandchildren. When my eldest grandchild, Emmy, when she was 4 years of age, I went to her first school sports day. Now, it's probably the same here in Ireland. In my country, the end of the summer term, every school has a sports day where all the kids run races against each other. And I went to Emmy's first school sports day. Picture this. Beautiful 4-year-old girls surrounding the teacher. About 25 meters over here, 2 older pupils holding a tape across what is obviously the running track. And all the proud mums and dads and grandmas and poppers all in a line, waiting to cheer for our own. The teacher said to the kids, when I say go, I want you to run as fast as you can. Are you ready? Are you set? Go! And they scattered in every direction. Why? They didn't have a goal. Who has a GPS or a sat-nav in their car? Most of us, don't we? What's the first question it asks? City, address, street, house number. What's it asking for? Destination. Why? Because only when we give the machine a clear destination can it plan the route. Only when we give ourselves a clear destination can we plan our route. We need 2 types of goals. We need a career goal. Isn't it strange that for most of us in this business, this was not our first choice career? We did something else first before coming into this business. And whatever it was we did before, we could probably see our career planned out in front of us. And then we come into this business, and suddenly our manager says, "What's your goal for the month?" Why is it in this business we're encouraged to set goals to fit in with the manager's schedule of mortgage payments? We have to ask ourselves a question. What do I want to achieve from my career in the financial services business? Take a quiet moment when this meeting is over. Ask yourselves this question. When my time in this business is over, when my time comes to retire from this business and I look back over my career in this business, what do I want to have achieved that will make me proud? And we have a career goal. Now we can start to plan the route. What do I need to do each year, each month, each week? And yes, if we have the courage, each day, that if we repeat it day after day, we'll bring our dreams to reality. Daily goals give us a sense of urgency to do now, today, what needs to be done today, to not put it off till tomorrow. It is what we do each day that will determine our success or failure in this business. Now, it's hard to set daily goals, and I accept that most people won't do it. It's much easier to have a goal for the year. It's the 31st of December. If I can just remember where I put the piece of paper with my goal written on, I'll know if I've succeeded or failed this year. Set a daily goal. We have to go home at the end of every day, face ourselves in the mirror, and answer the question, did I succeed or did I fail today? It takes courage to set daily goals. But let me give you a guarantee. Those who set daily goals will always be more successful than those who don't. Try setting daily goals. And so if our vision is in our goals, where will we find our action? Our action is in our activity. Let me ask you a question, if I may, and please be honest with me. Who did not make as many sales calls last month as we really should have made? Thank you for being so honest. Let me ask another question, if I may. Whose commission check at the end of last month was less than they would have liked it to be? Oh, it's the same hands. Is this a coincidence? Of course not. It will always be a case that today's calls make tomorrow's commission for us. The gods of selling will always smile most kindly on those who make the most calls. I remember my first day in the business. I said to my manager, "What do I have to do to guarantee I succeed?" He said, "Make 15 appointments a week." I said, "What if I only make 14? He said, "With 14 you might succeed. With 15, I guarantee it." I think I went through my first 25 years in the business before I had the courage to make less than 15 appointments a week. Talking about my first day in the life insurance business, I remember my manager took me around the office. He introduced me to my new colleagues. I knew some of them must be very successful because they didn't need to start until lunchtime. Then he put me in his big car and he drove me up Override Avenue to show me his magnificent home. He took me round his estate. Took me up onto the hill where we could see the whole estate, horses in the paddock, magnificent home, cars in the driveway. Put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "Young man," he said, "you do what I tell you. You see 15 people a week, every week, and one day, all of this could be mine." It's not for me to tell anybody else how many appointments they should have. You have to figure it for ourselves. But what if we were to make a small change? Just picture this for a moment. Let's just suppose we all just made the decision, I'm going to make one more appointment each week. That's all. One more appointment each week. Now, for the people in this audience, that would be, say, 50 for the year. 40 of them would be there when we show up. Probably 10 to 15, maybe even 20 of them would buy from us. Now, if the average sale is worth €1,000, one more appointment each week could produce 10, 15, 20,000 euros of extra income this year. Think about this for a moment. When we go home this evening and our much beloved says, well, did you get any good ideas this morning? And we say, well, darling, one of the speakers said, if I make just one more appointment each week, darling, you can have an extra 20,000 euros to spend this year. What do you think, darling? And what do you think your darling will say? I know what my darling would say. Make two. Now, if the foundations of our success are built on our goals and our activity, where is the mortar that binds it together? Well, let me say that I believe that we succeed for many reasons in this business, but there's only one reason we ever fail: lack of discipline. The difference between mediocrity and success in our business, in boxing, in piano playing, the difference between being where we are and where we would like to be is all in the word discipline. Why? Because the most successful amongst us discipline ourselves to do the things the less successful people don't like doing. Now, I'm choosing my words very carefully. I'm not saying the most successful of us enjoy doing the things the rest of us don't like to do. I'm saying we discipline ourselves to do those things whether we enjoy doing them or not. Discipline. I don't believe there are any extraordinary people in our business. There are some ordinary people who discipline themselves to achieve extraordinary results. Millionaires are not queuing up to get into our business. But there are people in our business who, through discipline, become millionaires. Our success doesn't come when we close easy sales. Our success comes when we lose hard-fought ones and have the courage, the discipline to come back and try again. I tell you about a client of mine. He was a client for many, many years. He came from the most humble beginnings, and he built a multi-million-pound business. And I would visit him every year, and he'd sit in his big office behind his big desk, and on his desk there was only ever one piece of paper. And I said to him on one occasion, "What do you keep on that piece of paper?" And very humbly and shyly he said, "Tony, it's the secret of my success." I said, "Please share it." He said, "Well, it's very simple. So I just make a list at the end of the day of what I intend to do tomorrow, and when I come in the morning, I just start at the top and work through to the end." Is this a new idea? How many of us have a list on our desks of what we intend to do tomorrow or this week? Let me see a show of hands. Of course, we all do. So I asked him the obvious question: what happens on the days you don't get to the bottom of your list? He said, "You weren't listening. Some days I get to go home early, and some days I work late. But I always finish what's on my list." Discipline. Discipline, discipline. And where should our prospects come from? Referrals, of course. Cold call if we must. But remember, cold calling is God's punishment for not getting enough referrals. So, let's talk about getting referrals, because people say to me, the hardest part of the job is just getting referrals. I can't get referrals. So I'm going to share with you a way to get referrals. Firstly, in that first 2 or 3 minutes when we are with a new prospect, going through what I call the preamble, when we say, "I am with such and such a company," and then we move very quickly, "But enough about my company, I'd like to ask you some questions in confidence about yourself." I suggest we add these words. The difference between my company and others, not our competitors, we don't acknowledge we have competition. The difference between my firm and the others out there are that most people in financial services have to spend most of their time looking for new clients, leaves very little time to look after the clients they have. In my firm, we are the opposite. We spend most of our time looking after our clients. We spend very little of our time looking for new clients. You will obviously wonder how we're able to do this. It's very simple. We only take on as clients people to whom we're personally introduced, to whom we're personally referred. But enough about my firm. I'd like to ask you some questions about yourself in confidence and move into your fact find. What have we done? Two things. The first thing we've done is we've just created a form of differentiator, a difference between me and the rest of the people out there. That in itself might just tip the client in our favor. But we've sown a seed so that now when we've written the business, whether it's an hour later, a day later, or a month later, it doesn't matter when it is, we can now say, can you remember when we first met a few weeks ago? And I explained to you the difference between my firm and the others out there. That most people in financial services have to spend most of their time looking for new clients, leaves very little time to look after their clients, and you'll remember I explained that we're the opposite. We spend very little of our time looking for new clients, most of our time looking after the clients we have. And you'll, I hope, recall, I said the reason we're able to do this is because we only take on as clients people to whom we're personally introduced, to whom we're personally referred. And I'm really only interested in meeting people, being introduced to people I can get on well with in the same way that you and I are getting on so well together. Who do you know who? And now we have to tell our prospect the kind of people we want to be referred to. It is no good saying, who do you know might be interested in what I do? What we have to say is, and I'm only interested in meeting people who run their own small business, may have capital to invest. Whatever kind of business you specialize in, have a young family, are responsible business owners like yourself. And then we can say, tell me, who do you know who runs his own small business? Who do you know who complains most about paying tax? Oh, he sounds like the sort of person I'd like to meet. You don't mind me using your name to help with the introduction, do you? And using this, we should get referrals from 9 out of 10 of the clients we ask. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to share with you in a moment some other ways of doing it. But just for a moment, the next question you have in your mind should be, okay, now he's got a referral, what's he going to do with the referral? So I'd just like to get a volunteer for a moment. I'm going to step down. Where's Ivan sitting? Well, Ivan, come out here and make a fool of yourself. Come out here and help me with this. Okay. Ivan is now my prospect. Okay. Face the audience, Ivan. Let them see your embarrassment in the light. Okay. And my good friend Ted here has just referred me to Ivan. Now, what am I going to do to make sure Ivan gives me the appointment I want? This is what's going to happen. I'm going to call him. Ivan, it's Tony Gordon here. Does my name ring a bell?
No.
I'll help you think. It's just yes, no answers, Ivan. Okay. So I'll help you. Okay.
No.
It's Tony Gordon here. Does my name ring a bell?
No.
No, he said. Oh dear, I am embarrassed. Am I embarrassed? No, I do this for a living. Right. But what I want is another 30 seconds of sympathy from Ivan so he'll let me continue. Ivan, you know Ted Dwyer, don't you?
I do.
Ted's been a client of mine, Ivan, for some years. When I was chatting with him the other day, he mentioned your name to me, Ivan. In fact, he spoke quite highly of you.
Well, what's this all about?
I'll tell you when to speak. Ivan, Ted seems to think that some of the things that we do might be of interest to you. Now, Ivan, I don't know if there's anything we do that is the slightest value to you, as Ted was insistent. Next time I'm in your neighborhood, I'd like to drop in, spend just 15 minutes with you. I'll run through the things we do, and you can tell me if there's anything there of interest. Now, Ivan, I'll be in your neighborhood on Monday morning at 10, or would you prefer Wednesday afternoon at 2?
Well, look, I already have an advisor.
Of course you do, Ivan. I would not want to meet you unless I thought you were already getting first-class advice. Would Monday morning suit you at 10, or would you prefer Wednesday afternoon at 2? What's it about? What's it about?
What's it about?
Oh, of course, Ivan. Ted hasn't had the opportunity to speak to you. We're in the financial business, Ivan. We advise our clients on ideas for putting money to work. Some of them, Ivan, are very tax efficient. Ivan, I'm sure like all of my other clients, you would agree tax is something best not talked about over the telephone. Would Monday morning at 10 suit you, or would you prefer Wednesday at 2?
I have an accountant who looks after all my tax affairs.
Of course you do, Ivan. I would not want to meet you unless I thought you were already getting first-class tax advice from a good accountant. Monday morning at 10, or would you prefer Wednesday afternoon at 2?
I'm dropping the children to school Monday morning at 10.
Monday morning at 10. Wait. You're wasting your time.
You're wasting your time.
That's quite likely, Ivan. That's why I'm only setting aside 15 minutes for the first meeting. Would Monday morning at 10 suit you, or would you prefer Wednesday afternoon at 2?
I give up.
Okay, give him. Okay. Now, think about what I said. Tony Gordon here, does my name ring a bell? I expect him to say no. Oh dear, I am embarrassed. That'll get him to pause so I can move on. You know Ted Dwyer, don't you? Yes, he said. Ted's been a client of mine for some time. When I was chatting with him the other day, he mentioned your name to me. In fact, he spoke quite highly of you. Why do I say that? Because he's not going to cut me off. He wants to know if there's another compliment coming. Ted seems to think that one or two of the things we do might be of value to you. Now, I've no idea if anything we do will be the slightest interest to you. I'm taking all the pressure off. This is non-confrontational. But as Ted was insistent, next time I'm in your area, or you could say, next time you're in my area, I'd like to invite you into my office. Depends how you do your business, folks. The most important thing is that we close. The purpose of the telephone call is to make an appointment. Now, how many times did we close? 5. There were 5 closes. I tell you, if you use those words and you close once, you will get 2 or 3 appointments out of 10 calls. Close twice, you will get 4 or 5 appointments. 3 times, you'll get 6 or 7. And you close 4 times, and you will get 9 appointments out of 10 referrals you call using those words. Is this good stuff or what? Oh, okay, good. Okay, now, who sends emails or letters to clients? Ever? Whoever sends it? 3 of us. The rest, we don't communicate. Who sends emails to clients or letters to clients? Of course, we all do. Okay, every piece of communication that goes out from our office, whether to a client or to anybody else, should have a PS if it's a letter or a footer if it's an email. Everyone. And above all that compliance stuff, you know, the stuff on the email that says ignore anything I've said above? Okay. What should it say? This firm grows by referral. We would appreciate being introduced to friends, family members, or business colleagues who you think might benefit from our advice. Every time we communicate with the outside world, we should remind, particularly with clients, that we value being referred, and eventually they will get the message. Here's another one for you. Please don't keep me a secret. Say to clients, please don't keep me a secret. Anybody here have got a client who never gave you a referral? Of course, we all do. Phone them up. Say, I want to come and see you. There's a question I want to ask you. What is it? I'll ask you. I'll come and see you. You can give me a cup of tea and a biscuit, and I'll ask you the question. Make a big deal. When you're sitting there with their biscuit and their cup of tea, say, here's my question. Why have you kept me a secret? And they'll say, what do you mean? Well, I only take on as clients people to whom I'm personally referred. And you're the only client I have who's never referred me to anyone. And I wondered why you've kept me a secret. And you know what they'll say? They'll say, I didn't know. Because we were probably too stupid to ask them. So say, oh, it must be my fault. And then we can move into our referral presentation. Why you kept me a secret. Next idea. Who's on LinkedIn here? We all know what LinkedIn is, don't we? It's like Facebook for business owners. Link to clients. Now, I am so untechy, it isn't true. But I can tell you, I know that this works. Link to clients. Once you link to a client, you can then see everybody that they're linked to. So here's 2 ideas. First idea, for the faint of heart. Look at the people your client is linked to. Pick out 2, maybe 3 names of people you think you'd like to be referred to. Next time you're meeting your client, Say this to them. I was looking through the people you're connected to on LinkedIn. By coincidence, 3 of the people there are people that I'd like to contact. What can you tell me about these 3 people? Obviously, anything you and I have ever discussed will always remain in confidence. But you don't mind if I mention the fact that you're a client of mine, do you? And we've just created referrals without ever actually having to say, who do you know who might be interested in? Is this a good idea? I'll tell you how good an idea it is. I gave that idea to one advisor that I mentor. He used it twice. I said, why did you stop? He said, it was pointless. He said, all I do now is print out the whole list. I put the list in front of my client, put a marker, highlighter pen on top of the list. Said, please take the highlighter and highlight those people that you think it's worth my while contacting. I said, and? He said, they do. If you think it's a good idea, let me know. Okay. Glad you're there. Okay, now, if we have clients who are sort of middle-aged, like I used to be before I got old, if we have clients who are middle-aged, there is a chance they still have parents. And there's a chance the parents have money. And they have less debt and more time to spend with us. How do we find out? In the fact find, we should always ask this question. Do you think in the future there might be an inheritance coming your way? And this lets us talk about the client's parents. Now we can say to our client, we find those clients who get the best value from us are where we don't act for our client in isolation, but where we act for the client's whole family. Would you introduce me to your mother? Why, they'll say. We find we can invariably get a better return on savings for our older clients, and usually with less tax. If we can get a better return for your mum, well, she'll have a higher standard of living. If ever she needs full-time care, she'll be less likely to have to call on you for help. And when her time does come, there'll be more for you and for your family to inherit. Will you introduce me to your mum? I gave that idea to one MDRT member. Within 30 days, he'd earned $100,000, whatever that is in euros, in commission, just selling to the mothers of his clients. Okay. Now, not everybody buys from us. Some people say, I don't believe in life insurance. Do they say that here in Ireland? Yeah. Just tell your client, tell your prospect. You don't have to believe in life insurance. It's not a religion. Life insurance is just risk management. We pass the risk from families or businesses who cannot afford it to institutions, to insurance companies who can afford it. That's all it is. It's risk management. And then I'd say to my client, to my prospect, at your age, out of every 1,000 people, 10 of you will die this year. And the insurance companies do not care if you're one of the 10, because 990 are still paying the premiums. They've only lost 1%. But the loss of you to your family is 100%. So let's pass the risk. Let's move the risk from your family, your business that can't afford it, to the insurance company that can. We should tell clients there is no miracle to life insurance. Life insurance simply replaces money we want but don't yet have. If €1 million is the amount that a client wants to give security to himself and his family, ask him, do you have €1 million? No, then take the life insurance. Start to save, start to invest. When you have €1 million of your own, you can throw away the life insurance. There's no miracle to life insurance. It just replaces money our clients want but don't yet have. Okay. Now, sometimes the prospect will say, well, Tony, my wife, if I die, my wife can go back to work. Well, of course she can. And I'm sure with her personality, she would get a great job. But if your death deprives your children of their father, do you want your wife's work to deprive them of their mother as well? At which point, very often they'll say, oh, well, Tony, if I die, she'll marry again. To which I'll say, let's face it, Would you marry her again? But don't say that if his wife's sitting in the room. Okay, we have to have the courage to think bigger, folks. Let me ask you another question. Who here likes to ski? I'm talking about snow ski. Who likes to ski? Any skiers here? Okay, well, I have to tell you that I think skiing is crazy. I mean, you take a piece of polished wood, you stick it on your feet, you pay real money to take a very slow queue and then go up a mountain to take about 3 minutes to come down again. If you haven't broken anything, you pay again and go around again. To me, I can't see any sense in it. But I'd like you to think about skiing when thinking about business because, and here's a question for you, for this reason. Question, when you ski, do you ski uphill or do you ski downhill? Answer, please. Downhill. Next question, why? Because it's easier to ski downhill than to ski uphill. What has this got to do with our business? Everything. Next time you're preparing an illustration for a client, whether it's for an investment or for life insurance, retirement plan, doesn't matter what it's for, always take the biggest illustration you can for the biggest sum assured, for all of their capital to be invested, for the biggest premium. They will ski you downhill to where they are comfortable. But if you take an illustration for a small premium or a small sum assured, they will never ski uphill. Remember, it's easier to ski downhill than uphill, so next time we're preparing to make a presentation, start the client at the top of the mountain. Is that a good idea or what? Okay, thank you. Okay, now, where's the vodka? Just let me get to that. I think that was my vodka. Cheers. Now, here's another easy idea that can have a dramatic effect on our business. Stop telling prospects and clients what they need. Everything we ever were taught by the insurance companies is wrong. Stop telling people what they need and start asking what they want. Why? Because what prospects and clients want is always greater than just their needs. If, God forbid, I don't make it home this evening, my family do not need the homes we own, they don't need the cars we drive, but I would want them to live in the world I created. What I want is bigger than what we need. When my younger daughter left home, I said to my wife, darling, we don't need this big house anymore. Let's downsize to something smaller. She said, we may not need this, but this is where I want to live. She also said, you can move if you want to, but I'm staying. It repositions us, folks. When we tell somebody what they need, we are selling to them. When we find out what they want, we're helping them to buy. It's a tiny, subtle difference. But I can assure you, it's worth millions. How to do it? Just simple questions. Tell me, what do you want as income for yourself when you don't want to work anymore? What do you want as capital in the event of your untimely death for your family? What do you want as income in the case of diagnosis of a life-threatening illness? What do you want to have happen from the capital invested? Just ask, what do you want? Tell you how effective it is. There's a young man in my country. About 15 years ago, he qualified for the first time for MDRT's top of the table. That's 6 times MDRT. So I approached him and I said, tell me, I congratulated him on qualifying. I said, what did you do that made the difference? He said, Tony, I took your advice. I said, but we've never met before. He said, no. He said, but I was sitting at the back of a room, meeting just like this. He said, you told us, stop telling people what they need, start asking what they want. He said, my business went up by over 100%, and it's the only change I made. Remember, what our prospects and clients want for themselves and their families will always be greater than just their needs. Okay, now, where does MDRT figure? Well, for me, MDRT is an absolute must. I believe that we all work under self-imposed horizons. We work under limitations we place upon ourselves. MDRT helps us to raise those horizons. It helps us to see ourselves in a different light. It's really like playing with the best. At MDRT, we believe that if we have grown because of others, we should help others grow because of us. It's as simple as this. And people say, well, will I get a benefit from MDRT? Well, let me ask you a question. Who here, now this is for the boys, okay, the girls have got to figure out their own question, but boys, who played soccer when they were kids? I know it's that English game, Billy, you said, but who played soccer when we were kids, kicked the ball around? Okay, is anybody here in the room who was good enough to play professionally? No. Normal answer, no, there isn't. Right, but here's a question. However bad we were at soccer, if we were invited to play with one of the top teams, I would usually say Manchester United, not at the moment. If we were invited to play with one of the top teams in the world for 4 or 5 days, to train with them for 4 or 5 days every year, it wouldn't make us good enough to get hired by that club. But would it make us better soccer players? Of course, the answer is yes. And this is what happens when we qualify and join MDRT. We get the privilege of spending 4 or 5 days every year playing with the top people, mixing, training with the top people in our business, and it makes us better people. We have to have the courage to invest in ourselves. I'll tell you about my first MDRT meeting. I told you it took me 8 years to qualify. I thought it might be a fluke. I may never qualify again. So I want to go to the meeting. So this is 37 years ago. My first MDRT annual meeting was in Hawaii. Now, Hawaii 37 years ago, I had to find out where it was on a map. It did not figure in holiday brochures 37 years ago. And I went home and I said to my wife, I said, darling, I've qualified for MDRT. Now, she's busy with 2 little babies. I said, I've qualified for MDRT. She said, oh, yes. I said, yeah, I can go to the MDRT annual meeting. She said, oh, yes. I said, yeah, I'm going to Hawaii. She said, oh, no, we are going to Hawaii. It took 27 hours to get there with 2 little babies. It cost me 20% of my previous year's income. But when we go to an MDRT meeting, it is not a cost. It is an investment in our careers. What did I learn at my first meeting? I learned the importance of self-belief. I learned that we can achieve anything we want to achieve in this business if we just have the courage to believe we can achieve it. I came home from my first meeting. I tore up all of my goals, made new goals to qualify for the top of the table. Same office, same staff, same clients. What changes? What changes is our perception of what we can achieve. Would it happen to you? It happened to me. If it happened to you, it could happen to me. Now, what I've done so far is I've talked about small changes, little things that we can do that can have a dramatic effect on our results. I'm now going to talk about what I consider to be the greatest opportunity that financial services professionals have ever been able to take advantage of. And some of you might, and some of you, it might just be too big a change. Did you know that Elvis Presley makes $40 million a year? The guy's been dead for nearly 40 years. Did you know that Michael Jackson last year made $250 million? Did he play any gigs? I don't think so, certainly not on earth. How come they make this money without actually even being alive to do it? And they're not alone. The answer is, in their business, somebody discovered scalability. 100 years ago, somebody performing the Elvis of his day, the Michael Jackson of his day, would only get paid when he stood on a stage and performed for his audience. But by the time Michael Jackson came round, somebody had discovered recording. They stand on a stage, they perform, and then we all go out and make them rich by buying all the recordings. That's scalability. For the first time ever, we can have scalability in our business. We can be making money without having to go out every day and stand in front of our audience. How to do it? By what in the UK is now referred to as the new model. I'm talking about getting into the fee-charging fund management business. It's as simple as that. It is simply a better business model for us from a business point of view. How? By charging fees, by being able to say to a client, in my practice, we don't take commission. We will charge you a fee. We'll charge you a fee for implementing, giving you advice and implementing the advice, and then we will charge you a fee for looking after your money on an ongoing basis. The most common numbers are 3% for implementing the advice and 1% per year for looking after the money. Don't think you can do it for less than 1%, because you can't. It costs 0.5% a year to run a fund management operation. You need the other 0.5% for profit. Why is it a good thing? Because for the first time, the advisor's long-term interests and the client's long-term interests are bound together. The more money we make for you, the more money we make for ourselves. So what are people doing operating this model? Well, it's very simple. They're doing a scientific risk profile. The scientific risk profile will determine the asset allocation of a client's portfolio. They'll then select the right funds. When funds cease to perform, the advisor will have a protocol. It no longer meets our levels. We'll change the fund, and once a year, at the end of each year, they will rebalance the client's portfolios to put the asset allocation back in line. Does it work? Absolutely it does. But I want you to picture this. You've got to concentrate on this, okay? On these numbers I'm going to give you, because most people, when they think about this new model, then do something that kills the scalability. And it is the scalability that is the great opportunity. Let's just picture this. An advisor, let's say operating on a commission basis. Let's say our advisor has 300 clients. And let's say our advisor has, for ease of numbers, he has 300 appointments every year. He's an old model working on commission, but he's fairly successful. He's doing 300,000 euros every year. His average client has 100,000 euros invested, and he's earning 300,000 euros a year in new commission from his 300 appointments a year. Everybody got the picture? Okay. Now, we know that this advisor, if he goes out next year and makes another 300 appointments, will earn another 300,000 euros, because by the time you get to that level of the business, you know you can keep doing it. But our advisor decides he wants to move to a new model. So over 2 or 3 years, he switches all of his clients, his 300 clients, with 100,000 euros each, that's 30 million. He switches the 30 million onto a fund charging basis. So now on the 1st of January, he knows that he's going to get 300,000 euros a year of income from the 1% he's charging his clients. Everybody follow me to this point? Okay, now here, this is the point at which we get it right or we get it wrong. If he says, I will come and see you every year to service you, to review your portfolio, because he thinks I've got to do that because I'm getting 1,000 euros from each of them. If he says that, then he actually hasn't improved, or she has not improved her situation one jot, because she's still committed to the 300 appointments every year with the 300 clients. So the key to making this work is to find a way of reviewing the clients without actually having to go and see the clients. I'd like you to write down 2 words. The words are obligation and opportunity. And in these 2 words are the key to making this investment fee-charging investment model totally, limitlessly scalable. Obligation and opportunity. We want to be seeing prospects and clients where there is opportunity and not out of obligation. How on earth, therefore, do we keep a client if we don't see them? Well, I'm not suggesting we don't ever see them, but we don't see them on a regular basis. It's not difficult to say to a client, this is what's going to happen now. And if you ever have a need to sit down with me, all you have to do is give me a call. And if I feel ever there's a reason for me to sit down with you, you'll hear from me immediately. You see, our clients are really only interested in one thing. Are we doing what we promised to do? What the client is paying 1% for is the investment model, what's going on in our office, and not seeing our pretty or not so pretty faces. Right. Does it work? Absolutely. So what I recommend to the people, the firms that I work with, very simple. They have a review pack. The review pack sends out a valuation. It sends out whatever commentary we might want to be giving them. It tells them what movements might have been made or might be necessary. It talks about rebalancing. And in there is a questionnaire. And the letter says, enclosed is our review questionnaire. Please take a few minutes to complete it and return it to us. Take special note of question 13, which gives you the opportunity to have your attitude to volatility, your risk profile changed. This is most important because if you feel your attitude to volatility has changed, it might require a change to the asset allocation in your portfolio. If we don't hear from you, we'll assume there's been no change to your circumstances. And that deals with the compliance issue. No change to their circumstances. Let me tell you, 97% of your clients will not return the questionnaire. That's good enough. The 3% who do return it are actually saying, I'm ready to buy some more. So what about segmenting our clients? Well, we've had all the buzzword about client segmentation. We should be segmenting our clients into those where we feel there is opportunity. Whether they're large clients that we like to see every year or very small clients we haven't seen for years. Segment them annually, once a year, sit down with staff, with a list of clients. Which of these clients do I need to see in the next 12 months? Do I want to see? Do I feel there is opportunity? And your biggest client, you might just decide, he'll go a year without seeing me. And maybe one of those small clients you haven't seen for years will pop up there because it might be worth finding out what's happened in his business. Okay, folks. Okay, let me move towards a close by just saying that we have to take responsibility for our own success. Francis Bacon, the English philosopher, wrote over 400 years ago, the measure of a person's fortune lies in their own hands. The measure of a person's fortune lies in their own hands. In other words, if it is to be, it's up to me. It's not up to anybody else. So please, if things aren't going the way we want them to go, it's not the company's fault, it's not the economy's fault, it's not the government's fault. And please don't say that the speakers this morning didn't motivate you. It's not our responsibility to motivate you. When we got out of bed in this hotel this morning, our sole responsibility was to motivate ourselves. And if we take responsibility for our own motivation, then we're taking responsibility for our own success. So let me finish with one last point, if I may, and that is belief. We cannot become more than we believe we can become. And I'm going to illustrate the story, illustrate the point with a story about something amazing that happened in the 1968 Olympic Games. There was an American long jumper called Bob Beamon. Now, in the long jump, when records are broken, it's this much. You can just about get a piece of paper in there. It's a centimeter, it's half a centimeter at a time. And Bob Beamon broke the world record by 55 centimeters. It took 23 years before any athlete was able to equal that jump. He wasn't even expected to get a medal. Maybe if all the other athletes had a bad day, maybe he might just get into the medals. How did it happen? And this is how he explained it. When Bob Beamon prepared to jump, he would walk down the runway to the jumping pit. He would take off his baseball cap, roll it up, and he would place it at the side of the jumping pit at the point that he believed he could reach. And then slowly he would pace out his run-up, turn, focus on the point of his self-belief, run and try to jump to his cap. And while he was pacing out his run-up, a groundsman with a broom, brushing the sand back into the jumping pit, brushed his cap 55 centimeters further up. Absolutely true. So here's a question. Our self-belief, here's a statement. It is our self-belief that will set the parameters for our achievements. Nobody will ever place a higher value on us than we place upon ourselves. So here's a question. What would happen if we were all to move the cap of our self-belief by 55 centimeters? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony. I think we all have to agree there's some wonderful ideas that Tony has shared with us here today, and hopefully we can put some of them into practice. We're now going to open the floor to a questions and answers session. So if I can ask the other two speakers, John and Billy, to join me here back on stage. And if there's roving mics, which you'll see around the floor. Rebecca and Emma have roving mics. So if you can please quote your name and just the name of the speaker to whom you're addressing the question. Thank you. Oops. Who's going to be first?
So can we go to lunch?
Yep.
Hello. Sorry, I had a question there for Tony, just on the referral side of it. How difficult is it to get a referral from a client that you don't do business with? You're in a house and you don't do business, you're leaving the house, but you're trying to get a referral from that person.
I think probably after my first year in the business, maybe even less than that, I didn't. My manager said to me right at the beginning of my career, your job in the first year, you've got to make 100 clients. And I said, how do I do that? He said, well, make a list. Here's a sheet with 100 places for you to make a list of 100 people you know. And I'd just been moved by a previous employer to a city where I knew nobody. So there were 2 names on my list of 100 names. And I said, okay, well, I've seen them and they don't want it, so where do I go now? And he said, you have to cold call. What's that? And he said, well, you pick up the telephone and use yellow pages, or you go in and out of businesses. I said, well, I can't phone strangers. I'm terrified of the telephone. So I must have made thousands of cold calls. I'd go in and out of small shops. The number of times I'd go into a sweet shop or a tobacconist and walk out with a box of matches or a packet of polos because I'd lost the courage to prospect the guy behind the counter at the last minute. When I got to my 100th client, I looked to see where they'd come from. This is the power of referrals. 16 of them were cold calls and 84 of them were referrals. And from then on, I only prospected for referrals from people who'd bought from me. Because you have the credibility there if the person has bought. So the answer to your question is, I wouldn't ask for referrals from somebody who isn't already a client.
Sorry, Billy, Michael McLaughlin from Dublin. Good morning or good afternoon.
Michael.
Well done. Have you, in your association, or you yourself, gone to other national associations to look for advice, to look for help, to pool resources in terms of medical, nutritional, physical, stuff like that? Has anything like that happened?
We've have looked at several systems from different sports, and funnily enough, a lot of them have come to us to see what we do. And obviously traveling around the world looking at other systems. Pooling resources, no, not really. We do help each other whenever we can, but yeah, we go on constantly trying to improve what we do. We look at other people and see what they're doing and see there's a fit. You know, when we started, we went to Germany, France, as I said, Russia, but we couldn't bring back a Russian system or a French or a German system. It had to be an Irish system and led by Irish people. So that's what we did. We took the best from there what they had, and then see how it fits into our culture.
Russian system might be illegal.
You're absolutely right. Get the X. Yeah? If you don't answer, if you answer back, yeah.
Josephine.
Yes, Dermot.
Dermot O'Mahony. I have two questions. First question is for Billy. Billy, did you sort out the linesman afterwards?
Sort out what?
Did you sort out the linesman afterwards?
No, didn't get a chance. Too busy feeling sorry for myself.
Do you know him still? Do you do?
No, I don't.
Okay.
He was wearing black, I think. I know who I marked that day, all right, but
the other question is for Tony. Tony, you talk about fees and the funds under management, which we would have some experience of doing, and you talk about a 2-year migration to it, and you say, you just maybe just communicate with your clients once a year. Our experience really would be for the bigger clients, we probably have to communicate more than once a year, and maybe you can wean them off it eventually. Is that a fair comment?
I wasn't talking about communicating, I was talking about physically meeting with. Yeah, we physically meet with clients because all those years ago we said to a manager or a supervisor, what's a service call? And they said, it's when you go back to see your client to try and get more business from them. And for some reason, therefore, we believe that we can't actually suggest to a client that what they're paying their fee for is what goes on in the office, and that we will actually have a meeting when there is a reason, a need for the meeting. We think that if we're doing our job and reporting successfully well to the client necessarily will value seeing us face to face. That isn't the case. It's more in our mind. Go back 30, 40 years ago and we did all our business in the evenings because that's the only time you can sell insurance. And then we found we could do business during the day. We didn't have to work in the evenings. And then we found we could get clients to come into the office. And what the heck was the difference? The difference was what we believe. Now, we haven't had time today to talk about communication, but we've heard from John about communicating. I believe you've got to communicate with clients. I would suggest clients should hear something from us, and with technology today, it's not difficult. Every month, you have to call them touch points in marketing. You have a dozen touch points a year with your client, plus a nice review pack going out. Right, and you're in regular contact with the client. Why on earth do you have to go and see them? Unless there is a reason. And the reason you're looking for is opportunity. There'll always be the exception that proves the rule. So let's say if you could have 70% of your appointments where there is opportunity, the potential to do new business or more business, whether it's with existing clients or with new prospects, and 30% of the meetings with effectively just for hand-holding your more important clients, you'll get the right balance there, and you'll get scalability because your funds under management will continue to grow. That's the key. There can be no limit. One firm I work with, young guys in their 30s, 2 young guys, these guys by the time they're 60 are going to be an IFA, small IFA, they're going to be sitting on £1 billion of funds under management. 2 guys. It's simple maths. You just got to do the maths. They're bringing in about 14 or 15 million pounds a year. You escalate that for 30 years with some growth on it. It's just simple numbers. But it only works, and the opportunity is amazing, but it only works if we keep ourselves freed up so we can be bringing in new money. It doesn't work if we just get bogged down with looking after the clients we have, because all that happens then is you've just said, that's it, we can't grow anymore. And that's not the opportunity. The opportunity is scalability.
Question for John Murphy. Ivan Kennedy, by the way. John, may I just ask, for clients who don't do business with us and keeping in touch with them, where's the line between keeping in touch and maybe being a little annoying? I mean, what's appropriate in your view?
Yeah, it's a good question, Ivan, and actually interesting. I think a lot of it goes back to what Tony's saying. It's in our mind that we feel, God, if I send something out, every week or every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks, is that spammy, and is that a bit irritating? And I think that's much more an issue for ourselves than it is for the people who are receiving it. I think that I think firstly it's got to be relevant. If you're sending rubbish out, then you're spamming, right? If you're sending something that is relevant out and is interesting, then there's a value in it. But I did because I was curious in that question. I think last year I actually sent a survey out to my entire list, and I asked, how often do you want? I pretty much asked that question. And the vast majority, the people who responded, and I got quite a high response rate on it, but the vast majority of people said, once every 2 weeks is great. 1 week or every 2 weeks. And people actually like to get, now they don't always open it, and I don't expect everything that 100% of what I send out is going to be open and read. But if they know that you send valuable stuff out, then they will open it and they will value it. And I know as a recipient, I mean, I would be on the an email list for quite a number of people because I'm interested in their material. And, I get their stuff, and there are a couple of people that I can think of. I'd pretty much open their stuff and have a read through it because I know that the source is good. If I'm actually getting stuff that is crap, well, then I just delete it.
John,
a question for...
Put me on your mailing list.
Tony, you were going on it anyway.
A question for Billy, please. Sean Byrne here from Dublin. How did you promote and develop teamwork among a team of individuals chasing their own special goals and dreams?
Very good question. And people see us as individuals, and I think the boys themselves had a big bone of contention in 2012 that we didn't win Team of the Year in RTE Sports Star Awards. They went crazy. They blamed me for it because I got Manager of the Year. And I said, only for fucking you, we'd had that Team of the Year. But they didn't recognize, it was the first time they recognised us in 2012 as a team. And then eventually, subsequently, 2013, we got Team of the Year. But building that team ethos, with the guys with individual goals, there is the one goal that we all have, and the mission that we all have is to consistently stand on world podiums. And we cannot work in isolation. We need our partner, our sparring partner. You may have it in work, but we need a sparring partner, somebody to push us, and run against, and punch bags against. So we all work together, and they all have similar fears, doubts. We travel around the world together, going to major competitions, to share rooms together. So we need the team, and the team around the team is obviously as much important. Psychology, when they have to make their way as a nutritionist, their strength and conditioning coach is going to get them into the condition that will make them believe that they can be successful. So that whole team, it is the whole team. Even one individual athlete will have a team around them. So there is that team. That's where the team ethos came from. You can't survive or succeed on your own.
Ted Dwyer. Just very interested, Tony, what you had to say. We're involved in the money under management for quite a while. In fact, the first policy that was done, the savings policy, where we actually earned a trade of income, was done by the same John Murphy who was up there when he was with Friends Provident in Dublin at the time, about 15 years ago. You're really challenging me because you say that we should be charging 1% for managing and for looking after the money under management. At the moment, we're probably not getting it. We're probably getting just less than 0.5%. And we're probably looking at an overall annual kind of average fee of about 1.5% if you take into account what the fund manager is charging as well. So how do we now turn around and say to our customers, new and existing, that from now on, or how are we actually going to get them to pay an extra 0.5%? Because you're absolutely right. At 0.5%, we're probably just breaking even on doing it. We're not making any profit with the rebalancing and with all the work that goes into actually getting the asset allocation correct. So it's a big, I hear what you say, and I know you're right, but how in the hell could we get from where we are to where we should be?
It's a very good question, and when I started doing this, working with other advisors, several of them had already moved to this model and were charging 0.5% and weren't making any money. And so I've been asked this question before, so I can give you an answer which I can promise you works. You go to your client and you say, are you happy with the service that you get from us? They'll say, yes. Are you happy with the performance we've been getting for you? Yes. And you could think of as many questions as you like. You say, well, I have some good news and some bad news. The good news is that we are delighted with what we've achieved for all of our clients, particularly for you. The bad news is, when we started doing this, it was an experiment. We believed it could work, and we've proven it works, and we want to continue to do this, but we can't do it at the price we're doing it for. So if you would like us to continue to offer this service to you, we have to put the price up from 0.5% to 1%. But I can give you a guarantee that the price for you will never go up again. You will get 99% who will say yes, and 1% who will say no. You have the choice at that point of keeping that person or not, or lowering the offering to those who won't say yes. But we have to be absolutely honest. You, Ted, as a businessman, a bit of a pioneer in Ireland at the model that we're talking about. You've pioneered it, and you have discovered that you can't make money at 0.5%. You just have to tell your clients. Your clients love you and love what you're doing for them. You just have to be honest and say, we can't continue it at 0.5% because we don't make any money out of it. So we have to charge you 1%. But I can give you a guarantee we'll never put the price up to you again. And you'll get 99%. Is that
okay,
and you will get 99% who, that seems to be the average. 99% say, yeah, it's only 0.5%. It's fascinating when you face a client with a fee charging model and you say we're going to charge you 3% for implementing our advice and then 1% per year for looking after the money. Very rarely do they focus on the 1%. If they're going to argue, they'll argue about the 3%, not about the 1%. It's the 1% that are the important part. The 1% we need to run the model.
Tony, Ian Heffernan from Dublin. Just a quick question there. You said that it took you 8 years to qualify for MDRT, and then you qualified and then went top of the table then the next year. Was that a gradual improvement process, or did something happen with you personally or with what you were doing to sort of make that seismic shift?
Well, I think two things happened. The first thing that happened was I discovered daily goals, purely by accident. Daily goals are incredibly powerful. And the only reason I discovered them was I looked at this MDRT thing and I thought, crikey, I can't do that much business. So I broke it down to a monthly target, and it's still too much. I broke it down to a weekly target, still too much. So I broke it down to a daily target, and I figured that if I could make one average size sale 4 days a week, I could qualify for MDRT. That's how small I was in those days. I could qualify for MDRT, and to make one average size sale, I needed 4 appointments, because 3 would be there and 1 of them would buy from me. So suddenly, instead of focusing on a goal for the year, I was focusing on a goal for the day. I've got to have my 4 appointments every day, 4 days of next week. Keep 1 day for tidying up. Got to have 4 appointments a day for 4 days next week, focusing on daily. And the urgency of got to sell today, must do business today. Not, okay, maybe you'll buy, maybe you won't. No. If the first 3 didn't buy, God help the 4th appointment. So it gives us that sense of urgency. And that was really the only change I made, apart from having this bigger goal of wanting to get into this club for the top 5% of financial services people. And my business doubled. It literally, it doubled without any other. And then I went to MDRT. And now, the MDRT annual meeting is in June, so I doubled my business. And then I'm thinking, gosh, I've just doubled my business. It's sort of 8 years or 7 years of mediocrity, then my business doubles. So what could I do now? So I thought, okay, well, let's try and push it up by another 50%. And I was actually having a great year when it got round to June. I was well ahead of target. I was actually thinking of when the summer's over, I think I'll coast the back end of the year because, hey, I'm a hero. And I realized that normal human beings who put their pants on one leg at a time, with all of the same problems that we all have, were actually doing much more business than me, and some of them were no more intelligent, and some of them were far uglier. And why? Because they believed it. And so the first thing was the daily goals and the worthwhile aspiration. And the second thing that then took me to the top of the table was just the belief that I could be as good as these people and the courage to set that goal. Now, I might have fallen short, but hey, if you aim you get to MDRT and then you think, okay, I'd like to do 6 times MDRT and you only do 5 times, is this a failure? I don't think so. So it's better to try and not succeed than not to try. So those are the things that happen. I needed a lot of sales. When I first qualified for MDRT, I had over 250 sales. When I first qualified for top of the table, I had over 350 sales. So I worked very hard, but I gave people good reasons to pay bigger premiums. Instead of doing business with the husband, whenever I went to see a husband, in those days it was, family stuff, I'd always make sure I'd take a term insurance illustration for the wife as well, just to make the sale bigger. I did personally, for one life insurance company, the broker consultant's whole year's target in term insurance, just selling to the wives of my clients that year. So I hope that answers your question. Think bigger, believe. That self-belief will set the parameters, the limits for our achievements, as they will in sport. If you don't believe you can win the gold medal, look what your man's mother did. She took away his belief.
Hi guys, Mel from Dungarvan. Billy, Katie Taylor there last Friday night was in Dungarvan hammering the bejesus out of some poor girl from America. It just looks like she might start running out of competitors. Is that possible? Or?
I know there's always new people coming along. She has a massive challenge at the end of May, the beginning of June in Bucharest. The European Championships are on. She's trying to defend it for the 6th time, which is a 12-year reign. And the girl that she beat in the Olympic final, Sofia Chagava from Russia, will be in her weight division. And we all know how close that fight was. So there's always a challenge there there are some new girls and younger girls coming through as well. They're making the grade. So she is, the creme de la creme of world boxing, and is a face for that. But she's always a challenge, and that's what drives her record. She wants to keep her record. She wants to be the best in the world, and she knows that they're all chasing. And if you witness the sparring sessions that I see with her and Paddy Barnes and Michael Conlon on a regular basis, because she doesn't spar with any women, she spars with men, and she believes that's what makes her better than her opposition. They're phenomenal. They're like world title fights. And, there's no quarter asked or given.
She terrified me.
Yeah. I wouldn't like to come home and leave a few bob short in her wage packet.
Okay, I'm just conscious of time. So the 3 speakers are going to be available during lunch anyway, if somebody wants to chat with them after. Before closing, I would like to call on Seamus Fox just to make a small presentation to each of our 3 speakers in appreciation of them speaking here today. Thank you very much.
It's in the post. There's 2 between 3.
We had to fight for the last one, didn't we?
Thank you very much, John.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Billy.
Thank you. There's the third.
There's one for you, Tony. Thanks very much, Tony.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So before closing, I just want to thank a few people. As you know, there's always preparation goes on behind the scenes for an event like today. So I want to thank Paul O'Donoghue and the rest of my colleagues on the Cork Region Committee. A thank you to Seamus Fox for his guidance and assistance in preparation for today. And Pat O'Sullivan and his team in Dublin, particularly Rebecca McGee, Emma Hill, Lorraine Keeley and Stephen Langton. And to Frank on the sound and the lighting here as well today. And to Hazel O'Connell and the rest of the staff at the Fota Island Hotel. And finally, I want to thank you for attending. It has been a great turnout and I hope you've all enjoyed the day. And I hope you enjoy your lunch. And for those of you playing golf later on, enjoy it. Otherwise, safe home. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That was a nice surprise.
Thank you, Laura, please. You've did a fantastic job today.
Thank you.
Well done.